Welcome back to another live. If you are in the B2B space, whether you're in sales or marketing, you've probably gone to or been involved in planning some kind of a trade show booths, things like that. And man, they can be really valuable. In fact, in my experience, trade shows do drive a lot of business, a lot of opportunities, a lot of pipeline. But let's face it, there tend to be uh, kind of boring and not pulled off super well. And so I've seen a lot of really interesting and creative ways to approach trade shows over the years. But I would say that most B2B companies are still not really taking it very seriously. We just kind of run through the motions and sometimes spend an incredible amount of money. In fact, last year I was talking to a marketing leader who said his company spent $1 million on one trade show uh, I think it was only every other year that they would go, but they would spend $1 million. So there's a lot of money being invested, but are we actually taking the time to think through how to do this creatively? So super excited to be joined by Aaron Thomas Smith today. He's a trade show guy, so super excited to be having him on to talk about how we do this more effectively.
Thank you, Joseph. Yeah, and what I'm trying to get the moniker out there is the trade show booth guy, but really the trade show guy is more apt, although that has been taken. So I had to sort of dial it back. It's sort of like adding a number at the end of your username for Gmail back in the day. I don't know if you ever had to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
But no, I'm stoked to be here, man. And honestly, trade shows, it's something that I have encountered. I've been in sales for over 20 years. I've been, the one who's deciding the trade shows, executing the trade shows, on the floor at the trade show, whether it's in a booth or not. And I've just seen a lot of what works, but as you kind of alluded to, I've seen a lot of what doesn't. And I'm really excited to be here at Nimlock North and just have their expertise and be able to understand better what makes the difference between a successful trade show for a B2B company and one that's, maybe just kind of going through the motions.
Yeah, so when most companies are working on their trade show booth, they think a lot about what needs to go in there. In fact, I'm thinking of a couple times where I've seen people having like race card simulators and stuff just to get people in that had absolutely nothing to do with their product or anything, just thinking of how to get people into the booth. So people think a lot about what to put in their booth, but they're not always thinking about how to create an experience or how to create a feeling and what feeling they want people to have when they go through the booth. So, what do you see and what's the difference between the two?
Yeah, I mean, you're dead on, and I've definitely seen that booth with the race car simulators. I think they were selling some sort of hemorrhoid cream, but really, what most people fail to identify when they're looking at their booth and their setup for a show is they really like to start with, like you said, the how, which is, we need a space for people to go and check in. We need a space for people to have meetings. We need a TV where we're going to be able to do a presentation. And those are all fine things, but you're kind of skipping down the process there a little bit. You're kind of getting to that point of execution. And where we like to start is the why. Why are you attending the show? The why behind your company, the why behind your product. And by starting with that, we're able to produce a more, I would say, an emotional experience. And Joseph, what I love about trade show booths more than any other thing, and I think we're kind of seeing this as it comes down. I've watched a number of your other episodes where you're talking about AI and the proliferation of all this new kind of, at a click of a button, you're getting this content out to people. And that's great. But as that reaches kind of a point of saturation, it's going to be more and more important to have these spaces where you are entirely in control of what emotions your prospects are feeling and how they are interacting with your brand. And a trade show is really unique, or an event really is really unique in that it is the only marketing tool that can effectively do that right now. So to give you an idea of a time we've done that, we had a client who came to us and they were talking about, we need a meeting room, we need a bunch of lights, and we need a space, and that needs to be specific for these different types of products that we're selling. So they were looking at having 14 different things in this 20 by 20 space that were all separate products. That's going to quickly overwhelm your client, right? And through our process, kind of taking a step back. Well, why are you going to the show in the first place? It's not
Mm,
just to make sure everyone understands that you have a catalog of items, which maybe it is, but what is actually happening here? And they broke down through a number of conversations. Really, what they were trying to do was announce that they were going from this smaller company to this big player in the space.
mm,
And that's a very different thing, right? A small company is the company that's going to go to you and say, yep, we need all 14 of these items out there. A big company is going to trust that your brand carries it, right? So we worked with them to really amplify their brand and the emotions that they're feeling, create this safe space for the individuals that are coming into the booth. And it completely changed the conversation, made a much more usable space, and it produced the type of interactions and feedback that they wanted from their prospects. So yeah, that's really where we're starting from, is that why. That's the Nimlock North. It's a flywheel we work off of. But if you don't start with that why with the trade show booth, you're almost out of the gate, kind of looking at the wrong thing, kind of missing the forest for the trees, so to speak.
yeah, let's dig into that a little bit more. And it's actually interesting because I'm working on a podcast right now that focuses on out of home advertising. And it's really out of home is really making a huge comeback because the more that AI, to your point, and I completely agree with you, the more that AI is being used for marketing, there are advantages to it. There is value. There's time where it's going to help speed up a lot of the things that give us time to actually be creative, to focus on strategy rather than, some of the menial tasks that don't really add a lot of value. But on the flip side, the more that AI is being used, the less unique things are. So things like cold outreach, that's been the focus because it's the easiest thing to measure, right? I send a bunch of messages, I track whether I sent them, I see a meeting come through from the sales side, right? Or you go to a trade show, you get leads, you track those leads, and you see what happens. And there is a place for those things, but the challenge with it is um, they don't build brand, right? They're not building that feeling, that emotion that people have that make it easier for them to buy, that make you the option that people want to go to. So on this out of home show, a lot of the focus has been on brand and how there are a lot of ways to track these things and to track brand. And it sounds like, at the trade show, it's ripe for a similar thing, right? Where everybody's doing the same boring card slinging bore fest that we're used to. You could take an approach where you're going, hey, how is this actually going to help move our brand forward beyond just products, beyond talking about the sales conversations that happen after the fact? It's how do we create an emotion that people remember, a feeling. So how do you go about helping your clients create those feelings and create a strategy to do that?
Absolutely. So there's a couple of different ways to do that. Number one, like I said, is starting with your why. One of the questions that I love to ask, just to give a little bit more background about what I've done. I don't know if you're familiar with EOS, Joseph, at all. So the Entrepreneurial Operating System, Gino Wickman, the book Traction, all that great stuff. I have been lucky in my entire adult career. I've either worked or implemented or been a part of an EOS company. I love the concept of starting with your company values. What are you trying to do, right? It's not just about making a trade show booth, or it's not just about making an animal pharmaceutical. You are trying to solve something or do something or support something.
Yep.
What is that? How does that distill down to your values? And how can we exemplify that through your trade show booth? So that's my favorite question to ask when we're in that initial conversation is, what are your values as a company? And do you feel that your current setup or the setup that you're envisioning exemplifies those? So I think that's number one. Again, our process, we start with a introductory call, which is really just to get a really good idea of the why you're going to the show, what you're hoping to accomplish out of the show, and give you an idea of our capabilities and what we can do. And Joseph, this is something that as a salesperson kills me, but I know it's the right thing to do. We've had a number of those conversations with people where we've realized we're not the best fit.
Hmm.
But with our decades of experience, we've been able to say, look, go and talk to these folks. They're going to be able to do what you need to do. So that's step one. Getting your bearings aligned, kind of telling you what's possible in the space, what maybe isn't as possible, give you an idea of the costs associated. Step two is going to be what we call the discovery call, which again, as a salesperson, makes me cringe because that's something very different. But this discovery call, we're going to bring in our entire team. And we're going to bring in our designer, our customer care advocates. We're going to bring in our salespeople as well who have the background and the understanding of your company. We're just going to sit down with any sort of decision makers or key individuals with your company and identify, again, what are we looking to do here? What are our options on the table? And get a better idea of the intangibles. We are all about turning your trade show from a cost center into a revenue driver. So that's the biggest thing that we're trying to do here. Solve that business problem. Execution, that's base stakes. And Joseph, I cannot tell you how many times I've had a conversation with an individual, which is all about the pain point of the booth didn't show up on time. It was dirty. It was broken. The guy that they told me was like, a supervisor was actually some 17-year-old kid that they hired from Baltimore. All that, right? Mystery bills, charges after the fact, all that stuff. Execution is baseline. You should be able to find a partner, whether it's Nimlock North or someone else, where execution is an afterthought, right? That's something you need to do. But what we're really looking to do is solve that business problem, turn your trade show into that revenue driver. And then after that discovery meeting, what we're going to do is our design team is going to go back. They're going to generate some concepts based off of what we talked about. And then we're going to present those concepts back to you. Those concepts are just that, concepts. We are a Minnesota-based company. Our favorite thing to say in that time is no Minnesota nice. Tear it apart, right? We want your honest feedback on these concepts. These are not final things, right? Because we aren't starting with the how. We haven't just gone from, well, we need 3 booths and we need 1 table and we need 5 chairs. There's not much wiggle room there, right? Well, maybe I don't like the chair so much. Maybe we try a different style, whatever that is. But because we're starting from concepts and ideas and values, there's a lot we can do with that. And our design team really tries their best to distill that. Sometimes we hit the nail on the head. Sometimes it takes a couple of rounds of revisions. But after we're done with that, you have a booth and you have a setup and you have a rendering that shows you how we're going to effectively build out that space at the trade show. And that's really the process, right? So we're really starting, I think, from the beginning, as opposed to where most people who are looking at trade show booths, and let's be honest, Joseph, a lot of the times you're doing this like on the gun, right? It's like 8 months to the show, and you got an email in your box about like you got to make a decision this week, and you're like, well, should we go? Should we not go? How was last year? Do we have any numbers? What happened to all those business cards? They're nowhere to be found. No one knows what's going on. But you ask the sales rep, and the sales rep's like, I thought it was really good. We should go back. I've been that sales rep.
That's funny. Yeah.
I've been that sales director. That's not an effective way to do this. So first off, look at your whole year. Look at what you actually want to accomplish. Talk to an exhibit house like us. Feel free to reach out to me too on LinkedIn. I'm happy to help. But to give you an idea of what's possible in that space, maybe you're not looking at the right shows. Maybe you're not approaching the right way. Maybe you're doing a 40 by 40 booth when you really just need to do a bunch of 10 by 10s. That sort of thing. So starting with that why, I think, is the most important thing.
Well, let me pause you for a second there, because there's 2 things I want to hone in on. One is to illustrate. I want you to illustrate an example of this in action, and then we'll move in after that to making this practical for people, like when they're thinking through how to create a trade show strategy, what are some things that they need to be thinking through that are going to really move the needle. So tell me about a time you've worked with a company and really seen them go from something where their booth was boring, where their concepts were boring and they were really struggling, and then what was the strategy that you deployed for them, and how did that turn out?
Absolutely. So I'm not going to name names, just because I want to be cognizant of our clients, and really we're not trying to be the headline here, right? We want you to be the headline. If all goes well, they should not even know that we exist. That's our hope.
Yeah.
An award-winning national engineering firm reached out to us, and they were content with their booth. It was just fine. The execution was fine. They were doing everything in house, but it was taking up a lot of time, which is not great. Time. And by the way, I want to just clear up one misconception. Your sales rep's time setting up a booth is costing you money. That is not free.
Yeah.
I want people to get that. All the time you spend figuring out where the booth is going to go in your space, moving it around, that costs money. So that's something that I think people just kind of think is a freebie. It's not. And if you sit down and actually figure out how much your $200,000 sales rep is costing you while dinking around with basically a large Connect set, it's not great. I'm just saying.
Totally.
So this award-winning engineering firm reached out, and what they really wanted was their company values to shine. They felt like the booth that they had was sort of just drawl. It worked. It got people in. They had the conversations. They were actually doing pretty well in terms of engagement and ROI, but it really wasn't expressing them. They just went through a big rebrand, which is usually when we get kind of brought up to the plate. So we started with their why, and we designed a booth around those values. But most importantly, we wanted the booth to sort of show, not tell. So one of those values was warmth, kind of collaboration that they did with their partners. And so we introduced an element of natural wood in the back. We really brought out the reds and the oranges, some three-dimensional lettering with some backlighting on it. And then, we're really thinking about not just what the booth is like when you're in it, but how we're drawing people into that booth. So this was a 20 by 20 island in the middle of the show. Kind of hard to see with all the other large booths around it. So we added an element of a hanging sign, just a nice square hanging sign with their logo on it that draws the eye from far away, brings the people in that are looking to meet with them. And then it had a number of just small kind of intimate spaces where the sales reps or the engineers could have a conversation with potential clients. We implemented that booth. What they loved is they said they showed up, worked the booth, and left. None of them touched an Allen wrench the entire show, which is fantastic.
That is fantastic.
What I like to say to my buddies who are sales reps is, your hands are too soft to be building a booth. They need to be shaking hands. That's what they need to be doing. And so they exceeded their business goals. They were super happy, but a little cherry on the top was they actually won the best booth at a national level clean energy show. So that was just this year. We were really excited about it. It was the second year they've had the booth. And we're already working with them. We're already talking with them about what's working, what's not. You can always improve. And that's another big part of our team is Melissa, she's our account manager. We're not just trying to get you a booth, get you to the show and be done. We want to take you through all the rest. Are there new shows? Are there new opportunities? Are there new things we can do? We're really your one-stop shop.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You make a lot of relevant points there, because in this, it sounds like in a lot of times it's the sales reps that are doing booth building. In my experience as a marketer, it falls on the marketing team to do those things. And same thing. It's like I would spend an incredible amount of hours every time we'd be doing a trade show, designing the graphic and getting it set right, and then designing booth stuff, setting it up, and then you get to the show and you're spending all of your time doing that. And there's so many other things we could have done with that time. I mean, for example, just from a marketing perspective, our time would have been way better spent going around and interviewing people at the show, doing some kind of show, inviting people into the booth to do a podcast interview or whatever. There's so many things content wise as marketers we could be doing instead of spending the time setting up the booth to build deeper relationships with people at the show, to drive more revenue. And then obviously for the sales team, even more so. I mean, how much money do you spend just to get those guys out there? And then they're spending their time at the booth rather than going and having breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever with prospects, meeting with people, or even for them. The interesting thing that I've seen is when sales reps run a podcast or when they're active on LinkedIn and they go to those booths as a content creator and they're creating content with their prospects, it's unreal the amount of opportunities that come from that. And you totally miss out on that when they're spending all their time setting
Absolutely.
up. What a waste.
Absolutely.
What a waste
Yep.
when you spent all the money to get those people there.
And just piggybacking off of that, Joseph, one of the things that we are getting a lot of requests for right now in terms of booth spaces, and again, this is getting into the how a little bit, but podcast spaces. Entirely enclosed or maybe semi-open spaces where they can do exactly what you're talking about. And, Joseph, one of the reasons I'm so excited to come on this is I'm a huge believer in what you propose, which is that podcast can be a revenue driver and can just be an amazing marketing tool. In my opinion, more people need to be looking at this seriously. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, so I'd love to just round this out by getting really practical. So you talked, about specifically what you guys do, your process for helping onboard people. You talked about the value that a client got from doing this. So I'd love to just make this super practical. Let's say that somebody goes, hey, I don't have the budget to work with Aaron right now, or I'm thinking about it, but I'm not going to get approval for that right now. Or, whatever the case is, or maybe they're trying to make a case to their boss. They're like, I need to come in with something that shows the value of thinking more like this, right? What are 2 or 3 things that somebody can do who's listening to this to elevate their booth? And specifically, like, I understand the booth design and everything is pretty tough. So more like strategy around how you even think about the trade show and how you're going to drive revenue through the trade show when you're there.
Great question, Joseph. So number one, don't think that I'm too expensive to work with. My time and my communication with you and our expertise, we're very free with it. We just want to make sure that people who are going to trade shows, especially B2B companies we work with, are able to be successful, right? That's our number one goal. So there's 2 tools that are completely free. You just need to reach out to myself on LinkedIn and I can help you out. The first tool is what I call the 72-hour AI playbook. That is a specific playbook for marketing teams and sales teams to utilize LinkedIn specifically and AI tools to connect with potential clients before a trade show. The number one thing that I see, if we're talking outside trade show, number one thing that I see being an issue to success or being a barrier to success for folks is they're not setting up meetings beforehand.
Yep.
They're not creating awareness that they're going to be at the show. And most importantly, they're not following up after the show. So that's the first thing. The second thing is what I call the connection architecture score. That's a really fancy way of putting looking at your booth through the lens of emotions rather than the lens of ROI or, again, the how, what you're putting into the booth. So both of those things are completely free. You just reach out to me. And that CAS specifically, if you send me a picture of your booth, I will generate for you 3 actionable things you can do that each take less than 15 minutes that will increase your engagement at the next show. Usually no or little investment required. The other thing, that folks can do really just to bring success to their next trade show is figure out your goals. Why are you going to that show? It might be as simple as we have to because our competitor's there. Well, great. We need to start doing something around that then. I mean, this is, I think, where most people, like we talked about before, that sales director or marketing director going up to their team and being like, well, what do you think about that show? Oh, I think it was good. It was pretty good. I can't remember. We have no actionable insights or data from it, but I think it was good. That's where most of your money is being wasted. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So starting with that goal, that why, that is going to be a game changer for anyone that's looking at trade shows. Yeah, I would say that's the easiest way. But those 2 tools specifically, if they are interested in learning more, they can just reach out to me anytime.
Yeah, and when you think about the cost, because at a previous company, I was really in charge of a certain product line and all the shows that we would go through. So I was part of this planning process of what shows we're going to go to. And when we calculated all-in costs, we're talking about travel for the team. I mean, it wasn't opportunity cost either. We're just talking about, the hard costs of plane tickets, travel, hotels, meals, all of that kind of stuff, trade show booths, all in, we were spending over $300,000 on events. And I mean, if you were including opportunity cost of time, it would be way more than that.
Way higher.
Because that wasn't even a factor, right? And so I was really advocating for, let's do fewer shows, be very intentional about which ones we're going to, and then actually plan ahead for what we're going to do, to book meetings ahead of time. And what are we going to do at the show to really maximize the value at the show? And then afterward, actually have a strategy that the sales team is going to follow up on to maximize the relationships that we built. But it's so hard, I feel like, to get something like that through, because it feels like, oh, the more we do, the better. But a huge portion of your costs every year tends to go to going to a ton of shows and going to more shows that aren't necessarily driving anything, rather than going, what's actually, to your point, what's our goal, and which shows are actually going to move us towards that goal. And then let's double down on those and maybe spend more on the trade show booth, more on the strategy, more on dinners after the fact, whatever the case is, to really maximize. And to me, that's a much more effective way to do it than just like, let's blast as many shows as we can and just show up, right?
Absolutely. And to your point, the show itself is great. The event around the show, that's where your sales team and your marketing team, I think, was going to get the most out of it. Those dinners, those connections, those mornings on the golf course or coffees with prospects. I feel like those are almost more intentional and more just effective in general than the trade show booth itself. But again, what we're there to do is make sure that you have the time to do those things, and that your trade show booth is going to follow up. And really, you can look at the trade show booth like a LinkedIn page, right? So
Yep.
You meet with these people, you connect with them pre and post show, you have these events, you have these dinners, you say, hey, come by the booth tomorrow and we'll say hi. If they come by your booth and it's dirty, or there's tape holding things up, or your imagery is out of date, that's not a good look, my guy.
Definitely.
But if you have something that backs up what they felt with you, completely different story, right? That's the thing that's going to really convince them, yep, these people are the real deal. I want to work with them.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for joining me today. Really, really appreciate it. Definitely, if you want to find out more about Aaron, he's active on LinkedIn, so go check him out. We're on LinkedIn, so you should be able to find him. Fairly easy, but thanks again, Aaron.
Hopefully.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Joseph. This was great. Really appreciate the time.